3 seconds before I broke those boards, I made a discovery that changed everything. A truth I've kept to myself until now. Many of you have witnessed my demonstration where I said, boards don't hit back. Newspapers and magazines have written about it. Students have discussed it. But what no one knows is that I've been holding back something crucial. In those 3 seconds, I saw something that completely transformed my understanding of power. Not just martial arts power, the kind of power that can turn fear into unstoppable force. The kind of power you're currently using only a fraction of. I've never shared this before. Not in my teachings at the Quoon. Not in any interview with the press. Not even to my closest students. But today, I'm going to show you exactly what happened in those 3 seconds. And why it holds the key to unlocking abilities you never knew you had. What I'm about to share isn't just another technique or philosophy. It's the hidden truth that took me from being a skinny kid in Hong Kong to becoming who I am. And in these moments together, I'll prove to you why this one insight changes everything. Let me take you back to Hong Kong, 1958. I was young, filled with pride, certain that my Wing Chun training made me invincible. The streets of Kowloon had taught me to be fierce, and my reputation was growing. Then came the fight that changed everything. His name isn't important. What matters is what he taught me, though he never knew it. The fight lasted 3 minutes. I had never tasted defeat like this before. My techniques, which I had practiced thousands of times, seemed to evaporate in the face of real fear. My arms felt heavy, my breathing restricted, my mind clouded. That night, nursing my bruised body and even more bruised ego, I caught my reflection in a broken mirror in my small room. A crack in the glass split my face in two, and in that moment, I understood something profound about fear. You see, fear is not your enemy. Fear is like that broken mirror. It shows you not your opponent, but yourself. In that fractured reflection, I saw both my weaknesses and my potential. The very things that make us fear are the signs pointing toward our growth. I spent weeks after that defeat in deep contemplation. I would stand before my mirror each morning, not to practice techniques, but to face myself. With each passing day, I began to understand fear is nothing but untransformed power. Think of water for a moment. When you're drowning, water is your greatest enemy. It surrounds you, crushes you, fills your lungs. But learn to swim, and that same water becomes your support. It holds you, moves with you, becomes one with you. Fear is exactly the same. This was my first glimpse of what would later become my water principle. Fear, like water, can either drown you or become your strength. The difference lies not in the fear itself, but in how you relate to it. That defeat in Hong Kong, it wasn't just a loss. It was the crack in my foundation that allowed a new truth to emerge. Every time I felt fear after that day, I would remember the broken mirror. Instead of fighting against the fear, I learned to look deeply into it, to understand its message. But understanding fear was only the beginning. What I discovered next would transform not just how I fought, but how I approached every aspect of my training. It would become the hidden principle behind all my methods. After that revelation in Hong Kong, I began questioning everything I had learned. The traditional methods, the countless forms, the rigid patterns. They were like chains, binding us to someone else's truth. I wrote in my journal that night, In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Let me share something I've never revealed from my personal writings. One evening, after hours of training, I sat by the harbor watching the boats. The water moved endlessly, adapting to every obstacle, filling every space. I wrote, "The perfect way to move is to move as water moves." But here is where most practitioners fail to understand. They think this philosophy is merely about physical movement. It is not. As you listen to my words right now, become aware of the tension in your own body. Feel it, the tightness in your shoulders, the strain in your jaw, the rigidity in your thoughts. This tension, it is the accumulation of every form, every pattern, every rule you've been taught. The traditional ways tell you to hold this tension, to maintain rigid control. But I discovered something different. I remember the exact moment this truth revealed itself. I was training with my wooden dummy, performing the same movements I had done thousands of times before. But this time, something was different. Instead of forcing my movements to conform to the technique, I let the technique conform to me. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless like water. When you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can destroy. Be water, my friend. This is not merely a poetic expression. It is a fundamental truth about human potential. The classical traditions teach you to mold yourself into a fixed position, a predetermined pattern. But water never tries to hold a shape. It simply fills whatever space it encounters. Right now, as these words reach you, try something. Let go of your preconceptions about what movement should be. Feel how your body naturally wants to move. This is not about technique. It is about rediscovering what your body knew before it was taught to be rigid. I documented this discovery in my training notes. True mastery comes not from perfecting the old, but from constantly discovering the new. Every movement should be a discovery. Every moment should be fresh, untainted by the patterns of yesterday. But to truly understand this principle, we must go deeper. We must explore what happens in that crucial moment when thought transforms into action. This is where the true secret of my training method lies. Now I will reveal to you what I consider my most profound discovery. A truth that emerged in the moments before my Oakland fight. A secret that changed everything I understood about power and combat. Many of you have heard about my fight with Wong Jack Man. The newspapers painted it as a clash between different schools of thought. But what truly happened that day began not during the fight, but in the moments before. As I waited in the room, I noticed a bamboo plant by the window. The wind outside was fierce, yet the bamboo remained unbroken. It bent without resistance, only to return to its position with even greater force. In that moment, I understood something that had eluded me for years. True strength does not lie in tension, it lies in the paradox of relaxed intensity. Think of the bamboo. It does not resist the wind by becoming rigid. Instead, it yields, and in yielding, becomes unconquerable. Let me share what I wrote in my journal just minutes before that fight. The perfect punch is not about muscle. It is about perfect alignment of body and mind in a state of relaxed readiness. This is the hidden method I've been leading you toward. Most fighters train to increase tension, to build more power through force. But I discovered that maximum power comes through minimum tension. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Yet this is the very essence of true strength. In that fight, I applied this principle for the first time in actual combat. Instead of meeting force with force, I remained relaxed until the exact moment of impact. The result was something I had never experienced before. Power beyond what mere muscle could generate. Consider the cobra. Before it strikes, it is completely relaxed. No tension, no preparation, no telegraphing of its intention. Then, in a fraction of a second, all its power manifests. This is the state we must learn to cultivate. The secret lies not in how much tension you can create, but in how completely you can release it. In that space between complete relaxation and explosive action, that is where true power resides. But this method requires something from you that most training does not. It requires you to unlearn, to let go of the belief that power comes from constant tension, to embrace the paradox that true strength lies in relaxation. Understanding this principle was one thing. Applying it, that was where my greatest failure became my greatest breakthrough. Let me share something I've never spoken about before. In my early days of teaching in America, I pushed myself to the limit. Hours of training, endless repetition, constant refinement. Yet one evening, while demonstrating to my students, my body locked up completely, my muscles seized, refusing to obey. In that moment of total failure, I discovered something invaluable. You see, I had understood the principle intellectually, but my body was still holding on to old patterns. This gap between knowing and being, this is where most martial artists remain trapped. This realization gave birth to what would become Jeet Kune Do's fundamental principle. Research your own experience. Absorb what is useful. Reject what is useless. Right now, as you listen to these words, become aware of your breath. Don't try to change it. Simply observe it. Feel how it flows naturally, without force. Now bring your attention to your shoulders. Notice any tension you're holding there. Don't fight it, just as water doesn't fight the rock but flows around it. Feel how awareness alone begins to dissolve this tension. This is integration. This is the bridge between knowledge and application. Every movement, every thought, every breath, they are not separate things. In true mastery, they become one flowing reality. I remember writing in my journal, the highest technique is to have no technique. This isn't a riddle, it's the ultimate truth of integration. When your mind and body are truly one, you don't need to think about technique. You simply are. Let me demonstrate this through words. As you continue listening, allow your awareness to expand. Feel the weight of your body, the points of contact with the ground. Notice how your breath naturally deepens when you don't force it. This is not just relaxation. This is the foundation of true power. The integration I'm describing isn't something you achieve once and possess forever. It's a constant process of discovery, a continuous flow of awareness into action. Like water finding its path. Each moment is new, each movement fresh. Now let us return to those 3 seconds before the boards broke. Now you understand what really happened in that moment of perfect stillness before the strike. Like the bamboo, I was completely relaxed yet utterly ready. Like water, I had no fixed form, yet contained all potential forms. And like that broken mirror in Hong Kong, I was facing not the boards, but myself. You see, when I said boards don't hit back, I wasn't merely stating a fact about wooden boards. I was expressing something far deeper about the nature of true combat, about the essence of real power. The boards were never the opponent. They were merely a mirror, reflecting back our own limitations, our own fears, our own rigid patterns of thinking. When you understand this, you realize that every obstacle you face, whether in combat or in life, is not external at all. In those 3 seconds, I wasn't gathering tension or summoning force. I was letting go. Letting go of everything that stood between my intention and its perfect expression. This is the ultimate truth I've been leading you toward. The real breakthrough in my training didn't come from learning new techniques. It came from unlearning the very concept of technique itself. From discovering that true power isn't about conquering others at all. It's about conquering the one opponent that matters, yourself. The tension that binds you, the fears that restrict you, the patterns that limit you, these are your real opponents. And like water, once you learn to flow past these self-imposed barriers, you become truly unstoppable. Remember this: in that moment before action, be like water that can both flow and strike. Be like bamboo that is both yielding and unbreakable. Be like the mirror that shows you your truest self. This is my gift to you. Not just a method of training, but a way of being. The dragon's ultimate truth is this: your greatest power doesn't come from what you add to yourself, but from what you finally dare to let go.